You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
In its first phase of the three phases planned to unlock India after more than 2.5 months of lockdown, malls, religious places, restaurants, and hotels are now operational with some very strict protocols in place. If you're going to a mall, you might need to have your temperatures checked at the gate. In places of worship, there'll be no touching of idols or holy books. Restaurants will have half the capacity of visitors. Hotels will have room delivery of food. So, how did the first day of reopening of malls and places of worship look like? What's the mood amongst people? Is it confidence, anxiety, or relief? And are the protocols being followed? In this podcast, you'll be hearing from the Quint's reporters from Delhi and Bengaluru who visited India's malls to bring you the stories of their preparedness and the footfalls. And you'll also be hearing from Professor Ayan Banerjee from the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, who talks about what safety measures should be taken in closed spaces that have a centralized air conditioning system. You're listening to The Big Story, the podcast where we dissect the headline making news for you. And I'm your host, Shorbari. The timing of Unlock 1.0 couldn't have been more complicated, as malls, restaurants, hotels, and places of worship are reopening in a calibrated manner. India is also fast climbing its way to the list of the most affected countries by the COVID-19 pandemic. During the initial phase of the first lockdown, India was the 15th worst hit country in the world, but recently, over the weekend, in less than 24 hours, India replaced Italy and then Spain to rise to the 5th spot. The country also reported the highest single-day spike of 9,983 new COVID-19 cases on 8th June, with the total number of cases shooting above 2,56,000. Even Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal has gone into self-quarantine and will be getting himself tested on 9th June after showing mild symptoms of COVID-19. So, India has reported an exponential rise in cases. However, the Health Ministry has said that around 48.20% patients have recovered so far. In one of his press briefings, Love Agarwal said that the number of deaths from coronavirus in India per lakh population is 0.41, while the rate in the world is 4.9. There's also an acknowledgement that the focus cannot just be containing the transmission now. It would need to be learning how to live alongside coronavirus with precautions. So it's under these critical circumstances that Unlock 1.0 comes. Let's start with the religious places first. While most states have opened up places of worship, the Maharashtra government took an exception. It's yet to take a decision on opening religious spaces for devotees. But those that have opened up have stringent rules in place. The center's guideline says, and I'm quoting it, quote, touching of statues, idols, holy books, etc. are not to be allowed. Large gatherings, congregation continue to be prohibited. In view of potential threat of spread of infection, as far as feasible, recorded devotional music and songs may be played in choir or singing groups should not be allowed. No physical offerings like prasad distribution or sprinkling of holy water, etc. to be allowed inside the religious place. End quote. Now, other than these standard protocols, individual places of worship are also taking their own precautions. The Jama Masjid in Delhi, for instance, the Indian Express reported, has done away with ablution or wuzu. The carpets have also been removed and people have been asked to bring their own prayer mats instead. In the first prayers offered in the mosque since the lockdown, devotees were also seen praying with a good amount of distance from each other. Like the Jama Masjid, the Bangla Sahib Gurudwara in Delhi has also shut down the Sarovar area, which used to be open for holy dips. And their devotees are being seen going through temperature checks. The Tirumala temple in Andhra Pradesh, which on normal days would get close to 100,000 devotees at least, opened up online bookings as a part of its trial openings. That's what NDTV reported. The temple will reopen from 11 June and only 6,873 people have made online bookings so far. The temple is also only allowing devotees from Tirumala and Tirupati regions for darshan for the first 2 to 3 days. However, the temple administration is yet to decide on how to run the tonsuring facility, a report on HT said. Some churches in Kerala will only open up after 30th June but are open to devotees for individual prayers right now. Now, coming to malls, while they are opening up, they're unlikely to have the same hustle and bustle with gaming, arcades, children's playpens, and cinema halls still being shut. While the SOPs remain the usual, like physical distancing, wearing of masks, no touch, hand sanitizers, etc., some malls are also taking a few innovative precautions. Some are putting signs outside stores that indicate the capacity of customers, while some are digitally displaying the number of people present inside the mall at a given point of time. The Quint's reporters visited two malls, Forum Mall in Bengaluru and Cinepolis in Lucknow, to see how they are preparing. And these are some of the precautions outside stores and in lavatories taken at Forum Mall.
So I'll show you one shop. So if you see this green board, this shows this store you can access because number of customers are less and they can accommodate more. In case if it is full, they will turn this card into like this, which will be the red. That means you'll have to wait for your turn and then you can go inside. So in washroom you will see there are two signs, one is red and one is green. And you will see here today we have a red board. That means you have to use all the urinals and washroom which has this sign.
And this is how Cinepolis is monitoring people at the mall and using its trial rooms.
हमारी एक टीम है कोविड-19 वार्डन के अंदर रहेगी वो, जो कि सभी तीनों फ्लोर्स पे मॉनिटर करेगी कि SOPs और
We have a COVID-19 warden team who will be monitoring all the 3 floors of the mall, keep an eye on whether the government's guidelines are being followed, whether the SOPs are being maintained. We have the capacity for 500 customers, excluding the mall employees, and we will have a digital display of how many people are present in the mall at a given point. The trial rooms are functional, but if a customer is not buying an item after trying it out, then we will put it in a quarantine box and store it for 24 hours and display it only after steaming the item.
परचेज नहीं करके जा रहा है तो हम उस प्रोडक्ट को एक क्वारंटाइन बॉक्स बनाएंगे, उस बॉक्स में उस प्रोडक्ट को रख लेंगे, नेक्स्ट 24 आवर्स के बाद उस प्रोडक्ट को हम स्टीम करा करके तब दोबारा डिस्प्ले करेंगे.
But even with these precautions in place, on the first day of the reopening, the number of visitors and shoppers were at a minimum. A lot of stores are also shut. Arpita, who's the Quint's Bengaluru correspondent, talks about the first day of reopening of Forum Mall.
Right from the entry point itself, you can begin to see the changes that will now be in place. The next time you visit a mall, there is a mandatory sanitization. In certain places, there is a disinfection tunnel that has been created where you are sprayed before you actually enter the mall. After that, you have to sanitize your hands, you have to disinfect your belongings, and also the temperature is checked through a gun. So these are the kind of precautions being maintained before one can even enter the mall. And after that, from what we could tell, there weren't a lot of people, inside the mall compared to the crowds that one would normally see in a mall, pre-COVID times.
Senior producer Zija Sherwani visited the Mall of India in Noida, and she says that all stores were shut there except a retail store.
Mall is open, but shops are not open. Only Big Bazaar is open, and people are allowed inside the mall if they have to go to Big Bazaar. There were some shops which are open, but it looked like the staff is there to plan on precautions and safety measures once the mall opens up for customers. We went to Mall of India around 1 p.m. in the afternoon, and these were the scenes there. And then we returned again around 6 o'clock, and the scenario was the same. And we also checked around a mall just close by called the Great India Place, and even Great India Place was also shut, and only Big Bazaar was open even there.
Obviously, public gatherings pose a greater threat of transmission. But on the side, there's also been an ongoing debate about whether the closed areas like malls and buses, for instance, which have centralized ACs, will doubly increase the risk of transmission. We know that droplet transmission is one of the ways that coronavirus can spread. And some argue that non-AC places that have cross-ventilation may help viral droplets get dislodged from surfaces. Despite the opinions and arguments, do we exactly know how aerial transmissions might be aided in AC areas? The answer is no, but a group of researchers studied what happens when an infected person talks in the vicinity of an uninfected person. A disclaimer is that the study was not examined in the context of COVID-19, but Professor Ayan Banerjee from the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research says one-directional air movement from ACs can help in the direct aerial transmission of coronavirus from point A to point B. He also says that malls that haven't updated their ventilation could be risky, especially if people are not well protected with masks.
Yeah, so basically the literature here is not absolutely indicative of a certain, result. But there is a very, very recent paper which says that any kind of, loud speech, probably the way that I'm talking, that results in 1,000 particles being emitted. If I'm talking for a minute, then 1,000 particles may be emitted, and those may linger in the air for about 8 minutes. Okay, so and you know that the most efficient modality of transmission of this novel coronavirus is basically by droplet transmission, right? And so if you now have a directed flow of air, which is basically going to transmit the particles that are emanating from my mouth, or when I breathe or sneeze or whatever I do, if those particles are basically just transferred by the air from, say, point A where I am standing or sitting to point B where you are standing or sitting, then obviously, and you do not have an efficient mask or masks, that way these viruses are only some 125 nanometers average size, and masks actually will not be that efficient if you really have a large flux of viruses invading you. So that there is an issue. There is of course an issue. And especially if you have malls where the ventilation is not great, there's no fresh supply of air that is being taken in. If they have not really updated their systems or cleaned their air, filters and all that, I think those stand a greater risk. Central air conditioning actually, might be worse. If you have this particular modality of droplet transmission, then it is essentially the air which carries. So that mode does not change whether you're outside or inside. I mean, if there are air currents, which will essentially take the virus that is emanating from an infected person into a non-infected person, that would be the same whether you're inside or outside. It's just the airflow which will take the virus, from point A to point B. Now, if you're outside, then what happens is there is air everywhere, right? I mean, there's not really a collimated direction in which air is blowing all the time. I mean, it just keeps on shifting. You have air from different directions. So the probability of, air coming from point A to point B directly is much lesser than when you have this air current, which is coming from a blower of an AC, which is very much in one direction. The central AC essentially means that you have a common, that there are blowers and there are vents, and the air from different places are circulated back and forth. So that, of course, gives an added risk. Again, if there is not adequate air which is being drawn from outside.
Moving on, the Health Ministry's guidelines encourage takeaways from restaurants, but also provided a bunch of SOPs. Workers will have to change their clothes after entering the restaurant, sanitize their hands every 30 minutes, avoid wearing ornaments or watches. CCTVs are also a must at entrances for tracking contacts. And like malls, even restaurants, as they're opening up, are taking additional measures. Photos circulating online show glass partitions at tables, for instance. But all that being said, without a cure yet, precautions are all we can take when we step out into public spaces, especially closed spaces like malls and restaurants. Professor Banerjee talks about what exactly should establishments and also citizens keep in mind.
So basically, as you know, the closer you are to an infected person, the larger is the probability of your picking up the infection from that person, right?
Absolutely.
So if you ensure that you do not have more than a particular number of people in the mall at a certain time, that obviously means that the distance between people who do not know each other and of course therefore do not know if one is infected or not, then that reduces. So I think the number of people entering the mall has to be restricted, especially if the mall is close to some kind of a containment zone. I think that is crucial. Then I would say that if you have your filters, I think they should be checked, because remember that the virus has a host. So it's not that the virus of 125 nanometers is floating around. So they need some droplets to actually go through, right? I mean, to sort of, so the virus sits on a droplet and the droplet flows. So the droplets, when, when we actually talk, there's a large spectrum of size of droplets that come out, right? So that changes from, say, maybe even 10 to 20 microns to like 100 nanometers or like 0.1 microns. So the virus can occupy any of the droplets. So if you have a good filter, that of course will filter away the more coarser droplets, which might actually have larger viral load, right? So obviously you need to get the your filters serviced, top condition, no sort of compromise there, because I think that is important. Because if you have good filters, at least you're cutting off a considerable portion of the droplets that are emanating from a person when that person is, an infected person.
If you like listening to this episode, please subscribe to the Big Story playlist for episodic updates. We're live on Apple, Google Podcast, Spotify, JioSaavn, and most of the other popular podcast streaming platforms. For other podcasts, please log on to the Quint website and check out the podcast section. For any feedback, shoot an email to podcasts@thequint.com.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts.